Welcome to this event on circular plastics, and welcome to our viewers in Japan and in the Netherlands. My name is Ruben Dubelaar. I represent Holland Circular Hotspot. And over the past years, we've been working with the Dutch Embassy and the Ministry of Infrastructure and Water Management to spark the collaboration on circular economy between the Netherlands and Japan. We're proud to host this event in Digital Expo of the Team NL Tokyo House. And of course, we're looking forward to cheering the athletes for the Olympics, but this is also a great opportunity to share best practices and explore further collaboration between the Netherlands and Japan in the field of circular economy. And we do so by hosting a series of events on circular economy. And today we kick off with the event on circular plastics. And the 1st of July, we'll focus on circular manufacturing. And the 6th of July, we'll host the high influentials and decision makers in the studio in Papendal, which is actually the home base of the Dutch Olympic team. So please allow me, before we start, to share a few technical details. If you have any questions, please use the chat box. We'll see if we can answer some of the questions during the Q&A or chat with the speakers. And for our listeners from Japan who prefer to hear the entire webinar in Japanese, you will see a globe icon in your toolbar for interpretation. If you want to hear the entire webinar in Japanese, please select this language. And if you want to hear the speakers who all speak English, please keep interpretation off. Do not choose English, as you will hear nothing on that channel. So for the speakers, I'm the dedicated timekeeper, so excuse me for jumping in if you're running out of time. So today's session is all about plastics. And plastics are strong, light, flexible, easy to use, but we know about its disadvantages. We're still landfilling or incinerating more than 90% globally. So today we want to discuss best practices from Japan and the Netherlands and how we can collaborate to scale up circular technologies and innovations. The interactive discussions will be led by Sann, a special envoy for Holland Circular Hotspot, working half of our time on circular economy projects in Japan. We'll see industry leaders who develop plastics or need them for packaging, and we'll see some new groundbreaking innovations in material development or business cases. Together with the Dutch Ministry of Infrastructure and Water Management, we'll wrap up the session and see what could be the next steps. But we'll start with an introduction of TNO to set the scenes by taking us through an integrated approach for circular plastics. Without further ado, I would like to give the floor to Pieter Imhof, who is Senior Business Developer, Circular Economy and Environment at TNO. Pieter, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for the introduction, Ruben, and good afternoon and good morning to the people joining this conference, the webinar. I'm feeling very privileged that I'm allowed here today to present to you the view of TNO and the general aspects of the circular plastics. As mentioned already, and the positive aspects of plastics are well known. It's a very versatile material. You can use it for very many applications, and you can combine different materials. As a result of that, you get a lot of different characteristics and properties. It is relatively low cost, seemingly, and it is strong, lightweighted, and you can do it. You can replace a lot of different materials like metal with this compound because of these properties. On the other hand, there's some dark side of today's plastics as well, and you can include them that these are hidden costs for society. One is associated with the plastic waste cleaning of the environment. So what is resulting in the environment, like the oceans, the soil, and the air? What kind of effects does it have, and how do you clean that and get rid of those? That's a hidden cost and typically taken now by society. Another aspect of plastics is, of course, the effects on health. These are not really investigated yet, but the discussion on microplastics indicate already that's quite a concern, and there could be significant impacts of microplastics and other aspects of plastics on the health. And also these costs are taken nowadays by society. Waste management, yeah, that's a clear visible cost. Also that's taken up by society, typically governments, for cleaning, for landfill, and also the whole recycling world is now taking cost by the society. And last but not least, biodiversity decreases as well by application of the plastics. Now, when you look at some facts, I said already, Japan, Netherlands are considered as leading companies, leading countries in dealing with plastic waste. On the other hand, when you look at Netherlands, still more than 60% is incinerated, with the resultant effect on CO2 emissions and loss of value of the material. And only 30% of the plastic is in fact recycled, of which only half has a high quality, so can be reused in the same or better way. In Europe, the situation is worse, so even more incinerated, but also landfilled. So that's a situation that you don't want to end up with, and only 50% is recycled. Japan, on the other hand, have a very high utilization rate of plastic waste. That's very good. Circular material use is still relatively low in 2016, as you see that. But there's still a lot of incineration there as well for the municipal solid waste. And overall, the amount of plastic waste per person is quite high in Japan. Our vision of the future is don't waste this material. Plastic is a very useful source, it's very useful material, and it will remain part of our lives. I think that's a fact. We can't do without it anymore. And there's a lot of benefits. And so that's something that you want to retain, the benefits of the plastics, and we would try to avoid as much as possible the disadvantages of these materials. And that's the approach that we discussed today, 100% circular plastics and investing in that. And there's still a long way to go. Now, this is then the typical approach that everybody understands nowadays. So what do you need to do first? At first, consider very much, what do you need to do? Do you need the material? So refuse when you don't need it. Minimize the amount of the plastic that you use. And when you use it in a smart way. So design the material in the right way and use it in a right way. At the moment that you have used it or have produced it, then you maximize the lifespan of the products and the components. So reuse, repair, refurbish, remanufacturing, repurpose. These are all the typical examples on maximizing the lifespan of that. And when the material is discarded, then there should be ways to recycle it in the utmost way so that you get high quality again and can recover all the materials as much as possible. And the pyramid that you see next to that is the amount of energy associated with it. So the higher in the pyramid, the lower the amount of energy associated with it. So the more circular it is. Another way of representing it is this circular approach. I don't go into detail of that, but you see that it's typical that the materials can be used in a circular way, that you design for recycling, that you sort and mechanical recycling in an optimal way. And after that, you can always chemical recycle, thermal chemical recycling. These are the technologies. But the first one is that you also need to know what is the impact of each of these steps. So sometimes the first option looks okay, but when you really rethink it and consider the impacts on society, on health, on cost and CO2, then you can come up with completely different perspectives. Now, TNO's vision on the way to 100% circular plastics is a fourfold approach. What I said already, at first go from linear to a circular value chain. So the whole ecosystem needs to be redesigned. Think of what is needed on the product side. What kind of quality of materials do you use? What kind of quality of raw materials do you need? Yeah. So the whole ecosystem needs to be integrated, that the companies work together and the parties work together. On the technical side, the recycling technology should be as good as possible. So the recycling development needs to be accelerated, and the focus should be there on high quality recyclate so that you can produce the same or even better type of material. So don't downcycle, but upcycle or maintain the same quality. And also there should be kind of standardization on what kind of plastics can be used for what kind of purposes, so that you don't mix too many materials to each other so that they're difficult to recycle, for example. Make a standardization of additives that you know how to use them and reuse them again after they become waste. The third element is implement the true costing for plastic, so the cost that I just mentioned. Incorporate it in the thinking and also in the real costing of the materials. Yeah? And last but certainly not least, involve both the producer and the consumer and stimulate also the responsibility, the end producer responsibility and the consumer responsibility. And that can be done in a variety of ways by changing the legislation incentives. I can go shortly on each of these elements. First one that I just mentioned, so increase the responsibility amongst producers so that they are responsible for not only the product itself, but also how it is after the use of the material. That can be done by legislation and incentives. Just like we did with the CO2 emissions, you can also do that in different ways as well. And the consumer there should be involved in many aspects. Make clear what they can do to help and stimulate the circular economy. And that can only be done by giving the real information on cost and consequences of that behavior. From the linear to the cyclical value chains, we think that you really need to rethink the whole system. Nowadays, we start from the currently available techniques and the sources. So waste generation is now the main principle to start with. But we think that you need to go to the market demand. What is needed, what kind of quality, what kind of volume, and what kind of products are needed to make that happen. So in the reversed way. So looking at the quality and what needs to be adapted. That can be sorting, logistics, the type of technologies which are currently already there or can be made in the future, but also very much how do you design the plastics, how do you use them, and that can be done by demand-driven standards, just like I mentioned already. And the requirements for that is that you have a long time guarantee for a stable playing field. Okay? So and what I said already, the collaboration throughout the value chain. The cost that should be included, we mentioned already. I won't go into detail on that, but each of these elements, they should be attributable to the the plastics, to the real cost. There have been already examples of that calculated when sustainable products were made and where the hidden costs were included in the total cost. And here you see a few examples for coffee, tea, and cotton. And there you see when it is the sustainable products in general have an overall lower cost when hidden costs are taken into account. There's still a long way to go to make that really happen, also to agree on the way that you do that. But the first steps have been made, and we set up already a system up within TNO to include all these elements, the impact cost into the total comparison and the scenarios as well. So overall, you can be sure, don't waste it. Don't waste the beautiful material of plastics. And they will play an important role in the decades to come. And we still, even though we minimize the use of it, the demand will still rise significantly. Circular plastics are the way to go, and then the whole way of reuse, redesign, and innovative technologies are only way to go, and to solve the dark side of plastics. The true cost pricing needs to be adapted to that, and to succeed in this, everybody needs to work together. So government, industry, consumers all need to collaborate and contribute to that. And I think we can be both countries can be leading in that respect. So Japan and Netherlands, they have wonderful people and technologies. They're very innovative and the right ecosystem to take care of that. So I hope this today webinar will help for the collaboration and the acceleration of the transition into a circular economy. Thank you today, and have a lot of fun with sequential discussions and presentations.
Thank you very much, Pieter, for this introduction and setting the scenes, and of course sharing TNO's vision. So if you have any questions for Pieter, please send it via the chat, and maybe Pieter, we may invite you also to take a look at the chat and maybe also reply directly if you can. So thank you, Pieter. And so the next block will discuss how we can work together to encourage the reuse of plastic materials and what are the best practices in the industry for engineering plastics differently, exploring bio and recycle-based plastics and products, and what other innovative circular business models can we explore. So we'll hear two speakers and then go into a panel discussion that will be led by Sann Carrière. So let's move over to our first speaker from the industry, and we're very glad to have Unilever involved in this discussion, as they have a very big impact on the value chain and are one of the front runners to help suppliers to develop new materials and solutions. I would like to introduce Thor Tummers, responsible for issues and external affairs at Unilever. Thor, the floor is yours.
Well, hello everybody, and thanks for having me during this webinar on plastics. For Unilever is a consumer-facing brand, so we have a lot of brands that we offer to our consumers around the world. And I know that some of these products are packaged in plastics, but also in other types of materials, such as glass, wood, metals, etc. Our most pressing concern is indeed plastics because of the downside effects, as explained earlier. So I'll just share a few of my slides. So how we as Unilever can accelerate the transition towards a circular economy. So some of the brands are probably well known to you, and whilst we are considering different types of packaging, sometimes plastics is simply the most sustainable one when we ensure it's being collected, sorted, recycled properly, and it has a high-end end market as well, as explained by TNO in the previous session, that we do not downcycle the materials, but we use it at an equivalent type or even at a higher type like virgin quality, which can be achieved by collaborating with other partners such as the chemical sector. So if we look at this system change, we have basically narrowed it down for 5 steps. If we start at one, we as a consumer-facing brand, we are in a unique position that we can both influence our suppliers and the suppliers of our suppliers, but also downstream towards our customers, such as retailers and consumers who are experiencing using our brands. Every day, 2.5 billion people around the world use a Unilever brand, and over 90% of the people have a Unilever brand in their cupboard. But when we design these products, we are often often dependent on fossil-based virgin fuels or plastics. So we need to drive the demand for recycled or bio-based and renewable materials to make that an industry standard. So we also applaud legislation in this area to really stimulate this traction by getting a year-on-year higher percentage. When we design packaging or products, we need to make sure that we keep the end-of-life stage in mind. So we call it circular design or eco-design, that our packs can all be reused, recycled, or composted if that is good for the environment, such as using tea bags. Then, and that might be a difference between Japan and the Netherlands in how disciplined and organized consumers are. And how can we influence consumer behavior? So our thinking is we need to make it easy for consumers. So we need to make sure there are sufficient collection systems and that is working properly. There's a harmonized system across markets. So either for bigger cities and for more rural areas, so that all our packaging materials are at least collected. Moving to step 4, when they are collected, they need to be sorted properly. And we need to maintain a high quality level, which can be done by innovative techniques, but we also need guidance and industry, but governments-led and industry-supported quality criteria. Minimum amounts of quality criteria are crucial to make sure that the material has still got its value at the end of life stage. Furthermore, in 5, we need to invest in more innovative recycling technologies. We produce both food and non-food, such as detergents or shampoos. But in foods, food safety is, of course, our primary concern. If we want to use more renewable or recycled materials, we need innovative recycling technologies that we can actually close the loop on plastics. So by explaining this value chain, you can imagine we cannot do this alone. So we need partnerships. We're working together with both governments, but also other players across that value chain to make this a reality. Up until a few years ago, there were this contact was limited. So we are increasingly now working with other partners to make sure that we can make this bigger system change work by creating an incentive, also a financial rewarding incentive to invest in this type of technology. When we look at our packaging, to give you a concrete example, that we are also innovating there. So this is a new Dove product launched in Japan about a month and 2 months ago, that we're both investing in recyclable pumps, which can be processed with a regular waste management system, but also investing in refill pouches, which are available in the market as well. And we are working with Fujifilm, Japanese company, to make sure that we develop recyclable pouches. They have a much better weight content ratio, so the amount of product they can move and the weight of the product, but recyclability is still an issue, at least for some markets. So by working together that we create recyclable and refill pouches that will have a big impact. So one, on our plastic use, less plastics, and secondly, 100% recyclable, and also valuable from a consumer perspective, because you can have this refill at home. In our experience, that is that requires less of an consumer behavior change than refill in store. So summing up, and we'll probably get into it in the discussion. We working on less plastics, better plastics, recyclable and bio-based, or no plastics, switching to sustainable alternatives. But on the other hand, we need to work with partnerships, upskilling the current ways of working, and advocating to an effective legal framework that creates the right incentives to drive a circle.
Thank you very much, Thor. It's great to see, and I would like to thank you. And I think it's all about getting the quality up and innovative recycling technologies to close the loop. So I'm also looking forward to the discussion. I already saw some questions for you in the Q&A box, so please also have a look at that. Yeah. While you also listen to our next speaker, I would like to introduce Mr. Maruyama, President of DSM Japan. Mr. Maruyama, thank you for joining, and please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for the introduction. I hope you can see me.
Yes, we see.
Okay, so let me start. Actually, today I wore the uniform of the TMDSM, that is a pro cycling team, and because now the DSM is sponsoring that team, and I heard this event is related to the Tokyo Olympics, so I brought some the feeling of the sports. By the way, I don't know how many of you know the company called DSM. I think the people from the Netherlands, of course, know, but maybe not from Japan. So let me very quickly introduce ourselves. So DSM is the science-based company, and the roughly saying the sales is like 1 trillion Japanese yen globally, and 70% of sales business is coming from like vitamin or micronutrients, and maybe 30% from the materials we call the materials, that is like engine plastic, etc. And today I'm talking about this material side. By the way, in Japan, because of the automotive industry, etc., this material sales is maybe a half or more than half of the business of us. And DSM is also known as the leading company of the sustainability in the past decades. And we call it the people, planet, profit. But all our business is basically focusing on the sustainability of the people and planet. But at the same time, we are trying to make the profit to continue the effort as the business practice. Otherwise, we are not a charity foundation, and we can continue the good things for the society. So we think the sustainability as the, of course, our responsibility as a chemical company, but also the opportunity to grow. And we are focusing on 3 areas, basically nutrition and health, and climate and energy, and also the resource and circularity. Today, we talk about the resource and circularity, especially for the material part. So in the resource and circularity, there are many ways to tackle with that issue. But in DSM, we are thinking about these 5 way to go. So the one is a reduce. The first one, reduce the use of the critical resources and replace any harmful hazardous materials. And extend means extend the life of the products. Then we can not the cycle this. The plastic use many times. So the extend the lifetime is one of the way to mitigate, and also to make the design better design to for the easy the recycling. So and also this is actually a very important and difficult part, but recover the waste of the plastic or the materials after the use. So it's easy to make the manufacturing process, but the difficult part is how to recover. That is also the things to consider. And this one is this picture I brought from the one from the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, so-called the butterfly model of the circular economy. So the right-hand side is so-called the circular economy. We often say not the straight the linear model, but after the use, end of the use, we recycle or like reuse that material. This blue part is a so-called recycle type model. And left-hand side is more like using the bio material, for example, using the bio-based the raw material to make the plastic. And if that plastic is a biodegradable, that is going back to the soil. And again, we can make the the raw material and make. So using this big the planet, we can make the recycle the structure for the material. So that is a way of thinking, 2 way of thinking to make this a circular economy. One is recycle, and one is a bio-based the recycling. And with that, we are trying to diversify the material to make the plastic. Basically, we are making the 2 different type of plastic. One is the engineering plastic, which is mainly used for like automotive or those high spec the automotive parts. And the other one is the very high strength the fiber we call the Dyneema. But anyway, for both the products, we are introducing we have introduced a new technology that is that using the biomass or like oil from the bio resources or the oil from the plastic waste instead of the fossil resource, the naphtha. So the putting those kind of things put into the naphtha cracker and make the monomer and make the plastic. So the final product is exactly the same, but a starting material, it can be the biomass or like the mixed the plastic waste. So this is the so-called mass balance approach, but we are started to this approach, and especially for the engine plastic part, we started to offer the certain type of we call the Passenier and Arnoud, but those two types of engine plastic bio-based from the last year, and we already make the commitment to provide the whole portfolio based on the bio or recycle based alternatives by 2030. So we are moving ahead with that strategy for the engine plastic. And another kind of recycle example is we have the so-called polyamide 6, the nylon 6, and that is used for the net for the fishing typically, or like the stocking or those kind of stuff. This is the project we are doing in India, but our partners recovering this the fishing net, and we are doing the recycling and making some value added thing from this the fishing net. So this is a project, and then still it's an early stage, but we already have a couple of the successful example. One is like the surfing the parts. And another one is that this was the last year, June, but in the Kickstarter, the young generation of the people in the Netherlands started some project that is making the all recycled watch. And I heard that they successfully raised the money, and this project moved ahead. So
sorry for interrupting, but I think I would like to invite also the others to join a discussion with you. So if you could wrap up and then
I will wrap up.
Interactive discussion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So that maybe the 1 minute. So the Dyneema is the super fiber to protect the people. But for this Dyneema, that we also introduce a bio-based same approach, and also we can reduce the CO2 emission with this way. And for the Dyneema, we also introduced the team of customers and also the players to recover the after use the fibers. And we made a team so-called a circularity team that is a cross-industry coalition with these companies. And then we have from the manufacturing to the recover all the value chain of this material. And by the way, this Dyneema is used for the ocean cleanup, this project as well, and also use this the uniform to protect the riders as well. So this is it, and thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Mr. Maruyama, and some great examples. I will hand over to Sann Carrière to ask some questions to our speakers, and we have about 5 minutes for the Q&A. Sann, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Ruben, and thank you to all speakers for explaining so nicely how you are contributing to changing the plastics system. What I find very interesting to see is that we have a research institute and two very large industry players that all have, in a way, quite a similar approach. A similar way to defining the problem, but then also a similar way of looking at solutions. As we have 5 minutes to get your opinions, the point that I would like to ask you to reflect on is, if we now have some consensus of what is the challenge, and we also seem to have some consensus of what is then the solution, how is it so that we are still only crawling forwards in implementing it? And potentially I can start with our representative of TNO to see what is his thoughts. Mr. Imhof.
Thank you. Yeah, as I explained already, it's the whole system is quite complicated. And then what you see now is that the integration, the interaction between the parties is essential to achieve the objectives of really achieving something. So a lot of companies and parties are focusing on a single element or a part of the whole chain. Whereas for a proper introduction of a real circular economy, all partners need to work together. You need to share the risk, the cost, the benefits in a beneficial way for each of the parties. Only then you can make it happen. So integration, stimuli from the governments, and real costing, what I explained already. These are, in our opinion, really essential. And yeah, there's a long way to go to get these parties together and to get the right incentives, considering the complexity of the material, the plastic, but also the complexity of the system and the collaboration and the effects of each of the materials.
Thank you. Cass, I could see in your slides that you are already working together with your complete value chain, or at least a very large chunk of it, in order to realize such an integrated approach. Could you share a bit more on how that's working out?
Yeah, thank you for asking. Actually, we just started the activity from the last year. So we are still the trial and error, how that works. But for sure, the most difficult part of the circularity in the plastic is how to recover or retrieve the end of the use plastic, I think. So you can imagine that our plastic is used for the automotive car engine, for example. And I don't know how long year you ride the car, but I mean, 10 years later, we definitely need to retrieve the certain type of plastic from the car. And the bad news is the different type of plastic cannot mix. So you have to select a different type of thing. So we definitely need a mechanism how to retrieve the end of the use products, and how to the divide the different type of plastic, glass, steel, etc. That is the most complicated part. But unfortunately, at this moment, most of the chemical company is focusing on the upstream side only. So that is for sure the great challenge. We are trying to tackle on that.
Is there, and could you reflect a bit on, is there anything, a new skill set? Is there anything needed within this approach that you would not need in the way that we would operate the economy before, or the supply chain before?
I would say of course there's some benefit is necessary, right, to join this the whole ecosystem. So even for the company which take care of the retrieval of the end use products, how they can have the benefit to do that and join this the ecosystem have to be more qualified, I think. So if that's the money or whatever, but anyway, the motivation is necessary. How to design overall structure is very important. So as Pieter said, I think a government or some the third party role is very important to design that, I think.
Thank you. Thor, if I could also ask you to join our conversation, potentially you could switch on your video camera. What would be interesting to hear, I think, for the audience, is to understand in what way your company, Unilever, is already engaging in this kind of activities.
Yeah, thanks for the question. And there are a few where we are engaging. So working on working with other international companies that are involved in collection, but we're also working a lot with universities on developing new technologies. So both on the end of material design, that we got alternatives, more sustainable alternatives, but also in recycling technologies. And our role is then to test materials and then work together on scaling. And we can do that in a few ways, by connecting more partners, but also making sure that we buy the end products, so their output, for a certain amount of years and volume. So we give them certainty about the offtake. And these types of offtake agreements are really beneficial both ways, because we are certain and we have got less volatility in pricing of our raw materials. Unilever buys approximately 700,000 metric tons of plastics annually, and our total packaging cost is 10% of turnover, which is about 5 billion euros a year. So for us, there's also a financial incentive to make these types of partnerships work, and together scale technologies come from universities to demo scales, pilot scales, and then even bigger. I think this type of collaboration is really beneficial both ways. What's also good and to understand is that we are much more in favor of incentives included in legislation, whereas we commonly would say let the industry take her responsibility. We would like to have some government interventions to accelerate. And I think this can be done nationally, but also internationally by governments working together. A simple example is that if you have plastics that is discarded and it has the classification of waste, it's much more difficult to reprocess this to a new product, whereas it should have the classification of a byproduct. And this kind of legislation is not done by a single country, it is done by multiple countries together. And I think this type of international collaboration is also valuable for companies.
Thank you so much. I see Ruben tuning back in, meaning that I think that my time is up. Is that correct, Ruben?
Yeah, thanks for leading this discussion, and thanks for all the speakers. And we'll be back with another Q&A in a bit, but I'm afraid we need to move forward, and we can keep talking about it all day, and that's what makes it so interesting. But we need to move over to our next speaker. So thank you all for this discussion, and I'm very sure we're all looking forward to continue the discussion. So let's keep doing that. But we need to move over to the next block, and where we're going to talk on innovations and new business models in the value chain. So some technologies might not be big yet on the market or still to be further commercially developed, but solutions that may inspire us and could help to set the next step to become circular. We would like to move over to our first speaker on this next block. He's one of the founders of the company that works on a circular polyester chain, Mr. Josse Kunst. He's Chief Commercial Officer at Carrière. Josse, the floor is yours.
Ruben, thank you very much. Let me see if I can share my screen.
Maybe you put on.
And yes, now I'm allowed to share my video also. Very good. And let me share the presentation. Is it already on the screen, Ruben?
It is.
Very good. And welcome everybody. It's a real pleasure to reconnect to Japan. I have a long personal history with Japan, and I really appreciate sharing this exciting new technology with a country that is so good in technology. So I think there's a lot of opportunity to collaborate because keeping it in the theme of the Olympics, we always say circularity is a team sport. You need to think completely different from a linear economy, and you need to work together. Cure technology is currently in rapid development, and the reason is quite simple. We as humanity, we produce 70 billion kilograms of polyester every year. It's the number 4 or 5 plastic in the world, but we only recycle about 9%. And that we even consider that already high compared to other plastics. Polyester in itself is a fully reversible polymer, so it is fantastic to recycle it. However, we simply do not collect enough, or we put so much other components in it that it really gets difficult to recycle. With Cure, we are on a long journey. We started already several years ago. We currently have built exciting pilot plants. I really think they're world-class. And our aim is to be fully commercial by 2023, and then work together with parties overseas, either through licenses or joint factories, to create a closed loop for polyester. Key in this is to understand that we want to handle all difficult streams of polyester, but also really produce polyester out of it. And that's the first key fact that I think sets Cure apart from other initiatives around chemical recycling of polyester. We don't make a monomer, because a lot of the initiatives make a monomer which is then mixed in a virgin plant. And if you do that, you only end up with 5 to 10% recycled content in a still fully fossil-based product. Our target is to 100% close the loop. So our product is polyester and not an intermediate. We have developed the technology to use the lowest amount of energy. And in fact, when we compare it to other colleagues in this business, we are at least using 50% less energy than most of the other technologies. And we believe that that is the best denominator to see if it ultimately can become economic. Not only do we do chemical recycling, in fact, our company has running business in mechanical recycling for transparent polyester. So we offer basically a very rational choice. What is the best way forward? Is it mechanical recycling? Can you improve by your feedstock preparation? But also, could you maybe design your products in such a way that you can make recycling more easy? We offer all those services out of the Cure concept. We've announced recently a very nice collaboration with Coca-Cola. Very impactful for us as a startup, of course, from a funding point of view, but also from a know-how point of view. And we're excited to bring our product with them to the market. We look at all the different segments, colored bottles, textiles, carpets, food trays, and a whole mixed bucket of all kinds of applications. And for each of those applications, we have leading brands with whom we collaborate. We currently have over 100 contracts signed with companies throughout the value chain. Because of the scope of Cure, we are quite unique positioned because we cover a very wide range of the product value chain. Whereas we can start as soon as waste is collected, we can shred it, wash it, mill it. We can then recycle it back to full polyester, but we can also assist in the design using this product into a fiber, into a thermoform, or into any final end application. So basically, with only 4 players, a brand, a product maker, us, and somebody who collects and sorts, we can truly close the loop, and that makes it very effective. We are part of a very vibrant North Netherlands European polyester valley. We're driven by the history of former AXO company. There's a lot of knowledge, both at academic level, polytechnic level, mechanical recycling, chemical recycling, and we are deeply embedded in that. Moving towards the final slides, here you see a little bit the overview of different ways to recycle polyester. If you can do mechanical recycling because your feedstock is very pure, do it. It's always cheaper, it's better. But our ambition is to be the cost leader for chemical recycling technologies, both in terms of investment as well as in operational cost. And we also believe we have the best carbon footprint of all the different technologies. And a very quick snapshot of that is given on this slide, where you see that if you make on the left virgin polyester, it's about 2.2 kilos or ton CO2 equivalent per kilo or ton polyester, where we can do it with only 0.6 kilo per kilo. Yeah, so only about 27% of the energy impact carbon footprint of fossil-based polyester. So this shows the promise of making it happen, because if you can make plastic out of existing resources with only 27% of the energy, we simply should organize ourselves to do it. It's just a matter of designing properly, collecting enough waste, and getting it done. With that, I'd like to give the floor back to Ruben.
Yeah, thank you very much, Josse, and great to see you. And please stay with us for a few more questions later on by Sann. And then I would like to introduce our next speaker of a very internationally well-known company, TerraCycle Loop, Mr. Eric Kawabata, General Manager APAC, TerraCycle Loop. Mr. Kawabata, the floor is yours to take over and introduce yourself.
Well, thank you very much. Pleasure to be with you today. I'm Eric Kawabata. I'm the regional manager in Asia Pacific for both TerraCycle and Loop. We're a very small global enterprise, and we have 2 platforms in which we operate on the basis of the idea of eliminating waste. Recently, we've launched a platform called Loop, which seeks to address the single-use plastic issue at its source. And we've operating this in North America, in Europe, and then more recently, just actually last month, started in Japan. And it's very simple. It's a reuse platform, replacing disposable packaging with beautiful, easy to use, reusable packaging. And we make it easy, try to make it convenient, hopefully more affordable, and as we grow, to become more accessible and easier to access. This is an example. One of our biggest partners in Loop is Unilever, and they are the pioneer in a lot of the innovative packaging that is on the platform, moving from disposable to beautiful, functional, reusable packaging. Some examples here for the brands that launched in Japan last month as well. And in Japan, you can buy Loop products, and once you're done, you can return them for reuse at 19 Aeon stores, which will expand to about 50 in this fall. Our other platform, TerraCycle, has been around a lot longer, about 20 years now, seeking to balance the equation where waste coming into an asset, right, is a difficult thing. In other words, the economic equation of recycling doesn't work because the resultant material is not as valuable, right, as the cost to recycle. And we operate collection and recycling programs by trying to add value to the output product to make up for, right, the deficiency in the material value, which would cover the cost of recycling. So we partner with large companies around the world to create collection platforms. We have R&D, and we add value through the power of design. So we have great R&D to make really interesting things, but through innovation and design, we can add value to balance out the value chain equation to make things recyclable. For example, ocean plastic is expensive to collect, but we're able to sell it in an upcycled format, right, through design into other products like pens, shopping baskets, right, that can help drive the value chain to help us collect and pay for recycling of ocean plastic. This is an interesting example. In Amsterdam, we started collecting and recycling used diapers with Procter & Gamble. And you know, it's shipped into a factory in Italy right now, Pieter Smart, and we're looking to expand this into Japan. And we recently started a collection program in Kobe in Japan to replicate the program in Amsterdam, and it's going quite well. It's been 2 months so far. We work with many cosmetic companies, and we don't just collect and recycle and you never see what happens. We like to demonstrate what the items become. What is the item going to be in the future, which will motivate people to help collect. So making makeup containers into spatulas, into desks and chairs that are donated to schools in need in China, making eco bags out of your own packaging, which could be sold in your stores. And it's a big problem. So we are actually finding more and more sponsors who are willing to join together to make a bigger impact in Japan. And this is the first program, it's actually launched this month, where these 5 competitive brands, right, came together for the purpose of recycling, which is very inspiring. And I'm going to end by sharing with you, I think, one project which is in the Olympic theme here. We worked with Procter & Gamble on the idea of how to bring people together for recycling. And we came up with the idea of, let's recycle together all across Japan, bringing your used packaging from home to AEON locations, 2,500 around the country, so everyone has access, and let's build something meaningful for the Tokyo Olympics. And what we did was, right, we united with schools, with government to collect packaging all across Japan to build the iconic Olympic podium. And I will share with you a short video.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Kawabata. I think thanks a lot for showing that.
And that in a nutshell is, what we do.
Yeah, no, great to see. And also the example that you've shown on the Olympics, I think that's a great way to reach people, to reach consumers, to create awareness. And please stay with us for the Q&A with Sann. So thanks a lot. That's where I would like to introduce the next speaker, which is Ms. Mariko McTier, co-founder of Mymizu, who actually uses some technologies also to create consumer awareness. So Ms. McTier, I'll hand over to you.
Thank you so much, and thank you so much for having me here today. I will very briefly introduce our initiative, Mymizu, which is also tackling single-use plastic consumption. So I'd like to go back here. Actually, two of my colleagues here today, Sann and Eric, we set out a couple of years back, really as an organization looking to raise engagement in social and environmental issues, and particularly in the idea of a circular economy. So we had Eric then come and speak to people and try to raise a general interest in this idea of circular economy. And by running workshops for companies and trying to figure out, what is it that's missing right now in Japan in order for us to be able to realize a more circular economy, we started to realize a few things. There was a lot of feedback that, number one, consumers aren't there yet in Japan. So, we're trying to do these things as a company, but there's no demand from the consumers. And then number two is, even though, I'm trying to do something as the representative of my company, it's really hard. Like, I don't know where to start. I don't know which partners to work with, and I'm not quite sure what a circular economy looks like. So there we set out to say, maybe we can leverage, our experience working, with cross-sector teams and really trying to give an example of what a circular economy could look like through our work. So today I'll talk a little bit about what we're doing in Japan. Many of you will know that we have a bit of a love affair with single-use plastic here in Japan. This is a strawberry that my co-founder found with 7 pieces of plastic to deliver 1 strawberry. So this is quite deep-rooted in some ways. So to try and change that, we think it's definitely a challenge. And in terms of numbers, we consume 24.5 billion PET bottles every year in Japan. And although a lot of those are recycled, it gives you an extent of the scale of consumption. And yet that's in a country where we're very blessed to have tap water that is potable, drinkable. You just turn the tap on and you can drink. And back to the presentation earlier, when we're talking about a circular economy, the first thing you want to do is to start to get rid of the unnecessary consumption of plastic. And for me, I was like, well, this is something that we definitely don't need. Unfortunately, it's kind of obvious why we have this level of consumption in Japan. If you're thirsty, the first thing you can find is a vending machine or a convenience store where it's very easy to get yourself a single-use PET bottle. So we have to start there. And that's why we launched our initiative, Mymizu. So we figured, what if we could make it easier and more fun as well for people to find places to refill and to start to change their behavior. We created a smartphone app where people can find places to refill their reusable water bottles for free, not just in Japan, but around the world. We have 200,000 spots from open source data, people adding spots to our app, and over 8,000 here in Japan. And that's everything from public water fountains to businesses who join our platform too. So for the public spots, we have users adding information. So it's truly crowdsourced. Obviously, we don't have the ability to create a lot of new spots. So we use what's already there. And then refill partners can join our network by signing up for free as well. And they can, on the condition that they provide drinking water to anyone who comes by their business, if they have a reusable water bottle. We also make it possible for people to see how much of an impact that change in behavior is happening. So how many bottles have they saved, but also how much CO2 emissions have they saved, because obviously it's not just about the plastic here. But it's one thing to have an app, but one of our maybe key approaches is to really have this holistic approach to systems change. And we look at it more like redesigning the system from the ground up. So when we talk about trying to solve this problem around single-use plastic, it's obviously not something that we can do just by swapping out someone's single-use bottle for a PET bottle. So we work with companies, big brands such as Audi, Mitsubishi Chemical here is a big company in Japan, as well as the likes of IKEA, who are really helping to promote this idea of refilling. We collaborate with local governments. How do you create a truly sustainable city? And they engage their young people to figure out how we can make that possible, as well as working with, doing a lot of talks, online events, collaborating with young people who are really, really interested in driving change, but maybe don't have the voice and the platform to be heard. here in Japan. We've been very fortunate. We've had a lot of media coverage, which I think speaks to the change in behavior that we're actually seeing here in Japan. And our work has been recognized by the Ministry of Environment and a lot of different places, which we're truly grateful for. But I think probably the thing I'm most proud about is really, I think the biggest impact that we're having is showing people what is possible. And I think a lot of people, especially in Japan, are like, oh, but things have always been like this, or it's really hard to change. And, we're starting somewhere small. It's just about, pet bottle consumption to start with. But if you can show that something is possible, I think you can really start to see bigger change there. So yes, that's just a little bit of an introduction, but I'm looking forward to the discussion. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Ms. McTier. Sann, I'll be handing over to you for some questions to our speakers. Sann, you're still on mute.
Thank you, Ruben, for the heads up. Josse, if you could also turn on your video camera. I know we are a bit short in time, so I'll be brief in my questioning. Thank you for joining and for joining again. My question to all three of you would be, I know how long your journey has already been and how much effort you have put into establishing, only getting to the point where you currently are. If you are now looking back on that journey and you would give advice to people that want to contribute to a circular economy in Japan, where would you advise them to start? Because you have the experience. What is the single thing that you would be needing the most from people entering the field? Mariko, can I start with you?
That's hard. Thank you. No, it's a really great question. And I think we took an approach, having worked with or spoken with a lot of different companies. I realized how difficult it is for traditional, especially a big Japanese company, to change things. And you have to be truly innovative and be prepared to take a risk, which is not something you find very often here in Japan. So I'd say if you're a big company, find partners to work with and find partners that you can share the risk with. I think what we've done is actually taken on a lot of the risk of doing something new. We're a nonprofit organization, and we've had a lot of companies join us in our work, and therefore we're helping to do something that's more innovative, and they don't have to do it all themselves. I think if you're an individual or you're looking to do something, as an individual, you can often be put off like, oh, it's not going to make a difference. But we started out really, really small, and we still have a long way to go. But I think we're starting to see individuals maybe starting their own initiative, or just even speaking to companies and saying, hey, what are you doing about your packaging? What are you doing about XYZ? And starting to get their voices heard by companies in Japan. I think that in itself can have a really big impact.
So opening up the conversation and sticking to it, providing a solution. Eric, what might you add?
Yeah, it's a really difficult question because there's not one single thing. There are many things you need to do. But for me, it's actually with Mariko's their team and their platform, their social innovation platform. There are many organizations now in Japan, if you seek them out, that can be your base, your friends, your support, connect you with the right people. And I think that is, I would advise people to look for like-minded people and like-minded organizations, and they'll find a big support base. And I think a lot of kindred spirits. And the other thing I would advise, especially in Japan, if we're talking about Japan, is to, as much as you possibly can, to try to partner with the government. And you'll find that people in the Ministry of Environment or in the environmental bureaus and the many different professional governments, they're really dedicated and committed to the issues and face many challenges. And if they see that you're sincere in your efforts and you're very serious about what you're doing, they will support. And I've seen that happen on and on in many cases without exception.
What would be super interesting to understand, because from my own experience, people can have the understanding that there is not such a broad community out there yet. So to get more feasibility or visibility, of that community, potentially after the webinar, we might get some additional sources so that we can see if we can connect and help connect. Thank you for your answer. Then Josse, you with indeed a very long history in Japan. Is there any specifics that you would like to share on how to advance and how to approach the country and the culture to contribute to circularity?
Sure. Well, and let me get again in the put it in the context of the Olympics. First of all, we are in technology development, so they're typically a little bit longer horizon, but I would say 4 advices. First one is still dream big, go for the gold medal. Don't focus on small baby steps. Yeah. However, make a realistic plan to get to that big goal. And that leads to the second advice. Get a good coach, get knowledge on board, get people that can help you. That can be partners, it can be mentors. Third one, get a good team. And that team is not just your own organization, but like the other speakers have already said, partnerships. There's so many people that have already developed part of the solution. If you integrate them together, you can make a real step. And the last one is the most important one, dare to fail. And that's, I think, culturally maybe the most difficult one. But try things out, lots of practice. Look at, I mean, big soccer fan, European Championship is going on. Only by losing can you improve, because then you know where your weak points are and you know where you need to get better. So try it out, experiment, test and test. That would be my key advice. Culturally challenging, but it is the way forward.
Potentially we can take a stance and start sharing on how we failed in the past to see if we can help others advance.
And fail fast. I think it is one of Japan's major electronic companies' slogan from Sony. Fail fast, so learn fast.
Thank you so much, speakers. I see Ruben tuning back in. That means that my time is up as well.
Thank you very much, Sann, for guiding this discussion, and also for the speakers for the interesting insights. You were already referring to the role of the ministry, so I'm very glad that we have Arnoud Passenier of the Ministry of Infrastructure and Water Management from the Netherlands in our event. It would be good to reflect with him on a few items that have been said during this session. Arnoud, thanks a lot for joining. Are you with us?
Yes, for sure.
Thanks.
The video is not working, isn't it? Okay.
Yes, we see you.
Yes, okay, yeah.
Yeah, so from the Ministry of Infrastructure and Water Management, you're responsible for the, let's say, circular economy agenda in the Netherlands. Maybe can you tell us a bit on how the ministry works together with the Japanese government?
Yes, for sure. Thank you for being here in this great webinar with a lot of innovations coming from industry. But for sure, the industry can't do it alone, and we as government can't do it alone as well. So we need each other, and it has been said already, we need to work in networks, trust each other, and understand each other to find new solutions. Of course, key to the system change of the economy, which is the circular economy, is changing the system together. We as a government are aware of our roles to play in all those networks, we are just starting the dialogue with the Ministry of Environment in Japan to see how we can set up joint projects, joint programs, but also to move together on the international stage, because in the end, the whole world has to become circular. And well, very happy to see that my Minister for the Environment, Stientje van Veldhoven, had a long talk only 2 months ago with Minister Kozumi from Japan, and it was inspiring to see how thrilled they are to move ahead and see how with innovation and partnership we can help that system change.
That sounds great. And maybe can you elaborate a bit on what are the main topics for collaboration between the Netherlands and Japan?
Well, first of all, of course, plastics is one big problem to tackle, and at the same time, it's such a useful material. So we should have keep the materials in the loop. It's also very inspiring for the consumers. A lot of consumers know and see what happens when you don't use the products and the packaging properly. You create a lot of waste, but also littering. So in the end, we should adapt our behavior to make things happen. But also, plastics is not only used in packaging, but also in electronics, in other manufacturing, the building environment. So there are a lot of topics which we can address together with Japan. Japan is, of course, a real big manufacturer also of electronics. So that could be an option as well to deep dive into those specific sectors. What can we do together?
Yeah, like we referred during the presentations, the role of the governments in international collaboration is, let's say, also key for the industry to develop new technologies. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, and how could the ministry help to even further take the next steps in the collaboration? What are the next steps to take as public-private collaboration?
Yeah. Well, first of all, the Netherlands is famous on our polder model. So we always try, even also from the Ministry of Environment, to see how we can collaborate together with a lot of networks to promote the right innovations, circular innovations. And we do that with a plastics pact, but all sorts of collaborative approaches. But only that won't be enough. If we want to accelerate the process, the transition towards the circular economy, we should adapt our regulations. One element is the polluter pays principle. So with EPR systems, extended producer responsibility systems, you create incentives in the market to change that companies like Unilever and DSM and Cure see that they are responsible not only to place the products to the market, but also to take responsibility on the afterlife of those products. And what we see is that those companies are more and more involved in the whole value chain. So also working on sorting and recycling of products. Yeah. The other thing is, I think is crucial, is that the government can play a role as in their procurement by demanding recycled content in products they buy, with demanding certifications of responsible use, by demanding reuse systems and that sort of things, and not only in their catering, but also in the building environment, by example. So there's a lot of possibilities to play a role as government, connecting, challenging, but at the same time creating the enabling environment to make it happen.
That sounds fantastic. And I wish we could chat even longer, Arnoud, but time is running out. But it's great to hear that we're working on some next steps, and having an open dialogue on procurement policies, guidelines. I think that will help the industry, and I think that was also clearly said by the industry that was part of the seminar today of the companies. So I think that will be great next steps, and we're looking forward to keep the discussion going. Also during the next events in this circular economy series, of course, because we have other series popping up. So thanks a lot, Arnoud, also for joining and giving us your views on that. So before we close off, we would like to invite everyone to turn on the camera, because what we're gonna try and do is to have a nice group picture, so that we kind of can make a nice farewell and send you all the group picture of the session of today. So if you all put on the cameras, then that would be for us the opportunity. And while doing that, I'm afraid I need to wrap up this first session on circular economy. I would like to thank you all for joining, and I would like to thank all of the speakers, of course, for being with us and sharing their insights. Also, I would like to thank the whole team of SoNow and Holland Circular Hotspot, the Netherlands Embassy, RVO, and PAP, and all who helped to prepare and host this session. Also, I would like to invite you to the next session on circular manufacturing, and the round, which is actually in 1 week from now, on the 1st, and the roundtable on the 6th of July. You can all find them in the Digital Expo of Team NL Tokyo. You know where to register. Thank you all for joining, and I wish you a very, very nice day. See you next time. Bye-bye.